Hi, everybody. We're here today with Seth Matus. He's an employment attorney, and he's in Naperville. So welcome, Seth, to our office.
Thanks, Gwen.
Given an opportunity to talk to you. So I've known Seth for a lot of years, and it's time for us to start talking about labor, employment, and different rights that we might have in the workplace that people need to know about.
Right.
We get a lot of questions about it, and so one of the things that I know recently changed was VESSA. Can you explain to our audience what VESSA is?
Well, VESSA stands for the Victims Economic Security and Safety Act. And what VESSA does, it provides a couple of rights to people who are suffering from domestic violence or stalking or those types of situations. People in that situation are actually protected in the workplace.
And
in
how
two ways.
so?
Two ways. What happens is that VESSA allows employees to have a certain period of time if they need to get medical recover medically, or if they need to help out a relative who is suffering some type of domestic abuse or stalking or something similar. And the amount of time that they get depends on the size of the employer. I mean, in the very smallest, they even get 4 weeks. But when you get an employer which has over 50 employees, you actually get 12 work weeks off per year to take care of those types of issues.
But you don't get paid.
It's unpaid leave.
Right.
That is correct.
Now, the other thing is that with regard to the domestic violence, it's my understanding that that would include court time,
Yes.
therapy time,
Yes.
any kind of medical recovery that you need, any time that you need to then have to make arrangements for your children, because your children, of course, could be included in the order of protection.
Anything associated with that. Maybe you need to go put in a security system because you're worried about the situation. Maybe it's just talking to the police. Anything which is associated with domestic abuse or stalking is something which is protected by VESSA.
So one of the questions that we're going to have of our clientele is, what do they do? How much do they have to tell their employer about their reason? Can they just say it's under the umbrella of domestic violence and then take time?
It really does depend on the employer, but what is required, they do need to provide some type of certification. And basically what that includes is just saying that we have this issue, saying it to the satisfaction of the employer. And it doesn't have to be too onerous, but they need to basically explain what's going on and why they need the time off.
So it could be both in a civil and a criminal situation as well.
Absolutely.
Because it could be a criminal domestic violence charge, or it could be a civil order of protection that they got with or without another pending family law matter, correct?
Exactly, yes. No, it certainly could arise in the circumstance of an order of protection as well as just a criminal type situation.
Right. And we also know now that order of protections are extended, and you talked about that no contact order. That would come into play where somebody might have a no stalking order, something of that nature, where there necessarily wasn't a family relationship, but some type of inappropriate behavior.
That is correct. That is absolutely right, and VESSA would apply to that too.
Okay.
Now there's another area which I do want to briefly hit on with VESSA, and that in addition to having time off, an employer also has an obligation to reasonably accommodate an employee who is suffering from a VESSA type situation.
What do you mean by reasonably accommodate?
Well, let's suppose that you have a person who is exposed in a corner office and they're worried about, say, the harasser coming into their office. Okay. Well, what VESSA can require is the employer to take some sort of accommodation, which is reasonable, to move the employee to another location, to do, put in some additional security, just so long as it's not something which is going to be really extremely expensive to the employer.
So, for example, like taking the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator's picture, putting it up front by reception to make sure that they're not entering into the building. Would that be an example?
That would be an easy example,
right.
Absolutely.
And then moving somebody or removing them from the front office position that they'd be the first person in line.
Making sure they're less exposed, making sure that, maybe when they're leaving at the end of the day, if they're going to their car, maybe you have somebody accompany them. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about when we're talking about a reasonable accommodation.
And then in addition to that, tell me about which employers are under this, because it's my understanding under Illinois law starting January 1, 2017, if you have one employee, you're under it.
That's exactly right.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So not many employers know about this.
That's correct.
But, absolutely, you can just have one employee, you're subject to VESSA. And of course, the larger you get, the larger your company is
the number of weeks, right?
Correct, the number of weeks. That's
correct.
And
the number of weeks is 12 weeks.
If you are over 50 employees, that's correct.
My next question is I need 2 days for court in week 1, but then I can work 3 days, and I need 3 days in week 2 for my physical therapy that I go through, but I can work 2 days. In other words, you don't have to take the time consecutive, correct?
That is also correct, yes. So, it can be, it's what they call intermittent leave.
Right.
And they actually have that under the federal Family Medical Leave Act,
right.
But it's a comparable thing. So
and does it expand over 12 months?
Correct, yes,
okay.
Over 12 months.
So it's important. So this podcast is really important for 2 reasons. One is it educates the employers that are out there. And then with regard to employers, tell me, does it have to be a W-2 employee, or could it also apply to those 1099 situations?
That's where we get really tricky.
Yeah.
I think that certainly with a 1099 employee,
they're really not an employee.
Yeah, they're not an employee.
They're an independent contractor,
contractor, and that's a situation where VESSA would usually not apply. The problem just is, we talk about 1099 employees, everybody does. Are they truly an employee, or are they an independent contractor? And sometimes if you've made an error and you're saying someone is an independent contractor but they're truly an employee,
then
they're
VESSA
entitled to VESSA.
Right.
That's correct.
And that puts you in a trick bag as well, and we could do our own podcast just on that distinction.
Just that whole issue,
right.
Absolutely.
So we don't want to get into that into detail, but I think what's important is, so from an employer's perspective, making sure that they're aware of it, making sure also, a passion of mine is that the counseling community is aware of it. Because it appears to me that when we go out into the different communities, that the counselors are not aware that this is available. And also even the domestic violence advocates being advised that this is something that people should reach out and tap into.
Being involved in a situation with domestic abuse is traumatic enough as is.
Right.
It's especially hard when you're worried about your job. VESSA is aiming to protect employees in that situation, so at least that's one area where they don't have to worry as much.
Right. And then from the perspective of our clients is not being afraid to speak up, because this is a law that's available. We also have an article on our blogs with regard to VESSA that people can look at and gain more information. And then they also could contact you if they wanted to know how they should inform their employer or what they can do. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you can provide that service for them. Yes.
Absolutely.
And so basically it would be just really making sure that they're keeping good records too. I know that people are it's very traumatic. So sometimes keeping track, how many hours did I take for this? When do I have to go to court? And kind of planning their VESSA leave is important as well.
That is right as well. And then also making sure that they document when they've contacted the employer, what they've told the employer, what they know. All those types of little steps are very necessary.
And then if your employer doesn't accommodate because they don't know, and it could be that they don't know, then having you available to contact them would be an important element for them to have as well.
Sometimes that's what's necessary, just to make sure that your rights get protected.
So tell us, how would a potential client or an employer contact you to learn more about VESSA?
Well, let's see. My website is www.matuslawoffice.com. You can also contact me at area code 630-470-6875. And I certainly also post blogs on VESSA and similar issues.
Right. So today, if you're listening, you do need to know about these rights. Look, when you're a victim of domestic violence and you get an order of protection, or there is something that has occurred where there's criminal charges, you have to seek out this information. Remember, knowledge is power. Gaining that information is what you need to do. So we're here to educate you. We're here to provide consultation to you. And at Sterk Family Law, we'll give you a free consultation about the issues that you might be having as well. But I think it's important that you get to know Seth, who would be able to assist you with that employment matter as well. So thank you for coming today and educating our population and the people who visit our website about this information.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.